We're good to go, Florence.
Yes, you may begin, Madam Chair.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Katie Ellman, she, her, Chair of the Queens Community Board 1 Housing Committee, with Vice Chair Vanessa Jones Hall. It is Monday, May 13th, 2024. And I would like for us to just start with our reps from HPD, if they could introduce themselves.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kevin Paris. I'm the director for the Queens and Staten Island planning team at HPD. I'm joined here with my colleague. Let him introduce himself.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
This is Sharon Taylor from HPD. I am represented here with my colleague Nydia, who is going to introduce herself now.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Nydia, and as Shahim said, we're here to talk about affordable housing. We're representing HPD tonight.
Thank all three of you for coming. We know how busy you are and overextended each of the city agencies are. At our last meeting, we had a presentation of the Housing Connect platform that was very helpful and informative, and each step of the way of applying for the housing lotteries. And there were a lot of unanswered questions from the reps at that meeting that committee members and other board members had. So we thought we would love to have you back to kind of go over those things in greater detail. That includes the list that Florence shared previously on the screen, and I know that she spoke with you about that before, Kevin. So we can get into that, but I just wanted to know initially from our committee, the colleagues on the committee, if they had any specific questions right now to start for members of HPD around affordable housing or any other things that they're thinking about or that their neighbors might be talking to them about.
I'm sorry, Katie, just one point of clarification that would be helpful for me. If you could just go a little bit into, so you had a presentation on Housing Connect at your last committee meeting, and that was with reps from HPD?
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
And it was very important for committee members, board members, and anyone that is able to watch that recording to see exactly how it works and to understand, it is a true lottery that any New Yorker can enter and browse what's available and to understand. The outstanding piece, or one of the things that a lot of us were interested in, had to do with the history of affordable housing in the city, but also there's a potential zoning change that will come into effect for a property in our district, which is the Ricardo's property on 21st Street and 24th Avenue. And those developers are looking to have an affordable program for people to purchase apartments. So there were a lot of questions around that and how that works. There are like big questions about how does that work and what does that mean? And it's been in existence in other parts of the city, but not really in our district, where there is not a lot of affordability at all, especially to buy something. So maybe we can actually start there, if you're able to talk about, the history of affordable housing as it pertains to purchasing. In this case, it would be, I'm not sure if it's condos or co-ops, Evie or Florence or someone else that might be on land use, if you can clarify that. I believe it was co-ops. But there are a lot of questions from the committee about how that could potentially work for residents, since priority is given to residents in our district.
I think it was condos, Katie, just since you asked. It's for condos.
Oh yeah, so they were affordable condo units, and some of them would be 3 families, and we all know that our 3 bedrooms, how we need more of those. And right now, the only other semi-affordable to buy in the district is Queensview and North Queensview, and those are, built in the 1950s. So this would be a new units that come online potentially in the next few years. where residents would have an opportunity to apply for the lottery to own one of them.
All right, so I'll take a stab. I'll take a stab at addressing the question, and if any of my colleagues feel like I'm misrepresenting anything, feel free to correct me. I am always happy to be corrected in meetings with folks. And also just full disclosure. And one of the things I did share with the board prior to this meeting is that, what we are trying to do or attempting to do is get the right folks to come out to these meetings to address the questions. I'm a representative, and so I'm going to try my best to answer some of the questions. I'm going to be honest with you, I most likely may not be able to fully answer the questions. And so I'll be taking those back to my team at HPD. And I'm working with Florence for subsequent meetings for me to have different folks join me to answer some of the questions from the board. Tonight we have folks from our marketing team. So one of the key things we wanted to talk about tonight was Housing Connect, since I was able to get those folks to join me with the meeting tonight. But again, I will attempt to answer some of the questions, maybe even at a high level, or try to get in. I'm not familiar with the project that you just mentioned, Katie, so I would like to learn a little bit more about that. If there are going to be questions related to that project, it'd be better for me to get some ideas of what that is so I'm answering it correctly. But I hear the point about the ability for folks to have and purchase affordable home ownership properties. HPD has a number of different programs that we utilize with the development community to effectuate and to bring online affordable housing. I'm sure folks on the board are familiar with some of our rental programs, but we do have a home ownership program. And it sounds like this project may be working with HPD to have that as part of their project. I'll go through a little bit, and Florence, thank you for providing the board with the appropriate links to our website. So a lot of this information you could also find there. We have our extremely low income affordability program, which is our ELLA. For strictly senior properties, we have our senior affordable rental apartments program, which is SARA. One thing you'll know, a lot of folks, if you're dealing with the city, we love our acronyms. So a lot of these have acronyms that makes it easy to roll off the tongue. We have our supportive housing loan program. We have our neighborhood construction program, our NCP program. We have a mixed income program, which we refer to as mix and match, where you have different varying levels of affordability throughout the project. And then we have the program that sort of speaks to the ability to bring online affordable home ownership, which is our open door program. It's a I'd say it's a relatively new program that we have. And so you will see a growing number of these sort of proposals and projects coming online. And again, with this project that's on 21st and 24th, I'd be curious to learn a little bit more about that to see if it's actually going to be coming in to talk to folks at our shop about utilizing this program. I'll stop there if there's any questions.
Just for follow-up, Kevin, this is an HPD project. They're in the ULURP stage now. They're meeting with the land use committee. So it hasn't been signed off on yet by the borough president or the council or the mayor's office. That's why you may not be familiar with it yet, just for your own institutional knowledge. But what Katie is looking for is an overall discussion about how it happens once it's done with the community board process, so people understand how to go ahead and apply for the home ownership. I tried to get Open Door here tonight. Unfortunately, we could not make the connection with them.
So all affordable units, whether it's home ownership or rental, will be available through the lottery. It would be the same process. It's not a different process for those units. All of HPD's units go up via the lottery. So it would follow the same path that you would see for our rental units that come online. And so you highlighted that this is a project that would be coming through HPD. So it's based off the information I've received tonight, I'm assuming that this is a private property that's going to be in conversations with HPD to utilize our programming to bring that component online to their project. Okay. Yeah, so those discussions would be happening now and going through the ULURP. If this project has to go through ULURP, it would go through its process. And once it's complete and it's received whatever entitlements that it's seeking, those conversations will pick up with the agency as far as trying to determine how this program will work within that project.
Abby, you have a question?
Yeah, specifically about the affordable condos. The developers, you know, it's in ULURP, so we just had our hearing. We're going to vote on this next week. They're choosing option 2
For MIH?
for MIH, correct. Is option 1 feasible for these kinds of projects?
I don't know the answer to that. I can get back to the board with that.
That would be great.
The
They
feasibility of
seem-
option 1 for a homeownership project. is the
Correct.
question.
Yeah, they made it sound like option 2 is really feasible just in terms of the financing and the mortgage. And I guess I'm just curious as to whether or not option 1 is also a possibility.
Madam Chair,
I know it's going to be mapped for 1 and 2, but they specifically said that they were going to be pursuing option 2 for this project. I
Madam
can
Chair,
look
if you
into
give
that.
me the authorization, I can put Kevin together with the developers team so that they can give you the exact answer if you give me that authorization, so that he can get the breakdowns of financials, because it's early for him to have the financials. If you give me that authorization, Madam Chair.
mean, that's fine. I guess I just want to know whether or not, you know, option 1 is actually is feasible. So whatever is needed to determine whether that's the case. Could be just a general, yes, we have seen projects like this using option 1, or if you want to get the specific financials, if we can get those from the developer, sure, if you want to do that analysis. I guess I'm just more curious as to
Yeah,
what's really possible.
I'll be able to find out the general answer to that question, and then we can see how that relates to this project as well. I think both things can happen.
Thank you.
No problem.
Kevin, do you have any insight into how it works? Once you, in both parts of Housing Connect, to own and to rent, what are the steps that happen once you win the so-called lottery, and how might it be different from renting to buying?
I'll turn to my colleagues if they have a better answer to that. I do not know the answer to that question, Katie, and I'll be able to get that if we're not able to answer that today. And so the question is the process to receiving a unit different from between a rental and a home ownership through the Housing Connect platform?
Yes, and
No.
also if you could, oh, sorry, and if you could also just walk through the steps of what happens once you're chosen for the lottery.
Sure. So the process in a sense works the same. There are slight differences in qualifying for the home ownership lotteries as opposed to rentals, and specifically what I'm referring to is your credit score. So your credit score is not a determinant when it comes to rental lotteries, but it is a requirement that is looked at when assessing an applicant's eligibility for home ownership, because of course, you know, they're paying into a mortgage. So there's specific assets that are required that need to be shown from the applicant that they have the money essentially to not only put down the down payment. In each home ownership lottery is different. Some may require 5%, some may require 2%, some may require 10%. And through assets, that initially helps make the determination if the applicant has the money needed to enter into that home or that co-op or that condo. I forget what the second portion of the question is. If you could just repeat it, Katie.
Oh, it was what the difference would be, and you answered that. And I guess, what's the approximate duration that it would take if everything was correct, all the paperwork was correct, from someone winning the lottery to getting the apartment?
So from the time in which an applicant sends in the information, presuming everything is good to go, it can take anywhere as up to a few weeks, up to a couple of months. And the only reason why it would take a couple of months is if a a management company reaches out to an applicant and they're being proactive in a sense. So they may reach out to more applicants than there are units. So those applicants would supply documents. Those documents would have to go through a review process, and contingent on how many applicants are eligible versus how many applicants are not eligible based on the information that they provided, that is what can elongate the process or allow an applicant to wait several weeks or months to qualify or to move into that retrospective home. But if everything is good to go and there's several units for the amount of applicants that they're reaching out to, can take a few weeks because processing all of the paperwork, all of the assets, and then once that happens, they would submit the information to HPD so that HPD can then review the information to confirm that the applicant in fact is indeed eligible for the unit. Then that is the final step and procedure. So it's very difficult in a sense to give a hard press time, if you may. So it's like, we can't say, it'll be, a few days. We can't say it'll be, because every agency, management company that is, works completely different in processing paperwork. So it's all contingent on how they process the paperwork and when it gets to HPD. But once it gets to HPD, the review process takes 1 to 3 business days. So the applicants would know. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought someone was saying something. The applicant would know in a short time span once it reaches to HPD, and they would receive confirmation that their file has been sent to HPD.
Right. Oh, and also I would like to add something. Also, applicants must know that when all the information, the applicant, that application, when it comes to HPD, may look eligible. The paperwork for HPD pretty much is a good application, it's a good to go. But then it goes to the second phase, which it'll be getting the mortgage and getting an approval for the mortgage. Sometimes all the paperwork that you submit into HPD, like I said, when we review it, it's perfect, it's okay, all the paperwork it's in order. But once you get to the bank, please, you have to keep in mind that they have other policies, other requirements that you must meet. And we do not have that information because every bank and every bank is different. So the marketing agents usually they have meetings before the lottery starts, and we strongly suggest for you to attend it. That information can be found in the advertisement of that home ownership. So it's imperative that if you are interested to apply for home ownership, you're alert, you read all your advertisements, and that's where you will find the information regarding all these forums, all these meetings that the marketing agents usually have before the lottery starts, so you can get ready and have all the paperwork ready for the first-time home buyers. Why do I say this? Because these programs are only for first-time home buyers. If you own a residency before and you sold it 10 years ago, you won't qualify. If you inherit a condo, if you inherit a house, even if it's in South Carolina, outside of New York City, you won't qualify. This is for first-time home buyers, so keep that in mind.
Thank you for that. Do any committee members have questions before I ask more questions?
No hands, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. About how many affordable to own units are on Housing Connect right now? I usually see some in Manhattan. Maybe there was one in the Bronx, but it's very rare to see any of them in Queens.
I don't think we have that information of how many homeownership we have available. I'm not sure. We can probably get back to you with that question of how many homeownership we got right now. You mean live that actually applicants can apply, or you want a history of how many we had?
I guess a general history. We
Yeah.
could all check out ourselves, Housing Connect ourselves. But it does seem like the opportunities definitely don't exist in our district, and there are just less of them in the borough.
Right. We don't have that information, but you can definitely send us that question so we could try to find out for you.
Yeah, and one thing I'd add to that, Katie, is that whenever, you know, we strive to have a variety of different sort of products come online in our projects. And we do see that the severe lack of opportunities for homeownership opportunities. And it's one of the things that we hear from our colleagues in the council and our elected officials. You know, when we have projects, let's try to see if we can have some sort of homeownership component as part of those projects. So you know, you are correct. There aren't that many opportunities in the borough, but we are looking to change that to concerted more of a focus. Especially, I know, looking with my team in planning to see where we can have those opportunities come on and try to fit it with the correct projects for that to happen.
Just to slightly piggyback off of what Kevin just mentioned.
Great.
So
Thank you. Fanny,
uh,
Hi,
ahead.
question for Mr. Taylor. On that new ERLIP application, when do they submit the operating basis for those condos?
could you just elaborate a little bit more on
Madam
the
Chair,
question?
do you want the public to engage now, or do you want to finish with committee first?
They asked for a question and you have no hand raised on a Zoom site. So I will,
Usually this is I'm Fanny, it's Florence. How are you?
Florence, how you doing?
Good
Well,
to
anyway,
see you.
I
This
have
is usually a working meeting, so usually the Madam Chair, who is Katie Ellman,
Okay.
will allow the board members to finish first, and then if at the end of the meeting she chooses, at that point she'll open the floor. I have to go by whatever the chairman says, so please let Katie
I'm gonna mute myself now.
decide.
I'm gonna mute myself now. Sorry.
No, it's fine. There weren't any other committee questions. And Fanny posted her question in the chat. I think it would be advantageous to have her just say it herself instead of me reading it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I was on the ERLIP when they presented it, and I'd like to know when the operating budget will be presented to the board on affordable housing. I'm trying to learn about this, you know, because $350,000 for a 3-bedroom condo is wonderful, but what would be the maintenance on it and the taxes? And this has to have AG approval too on condominiums. That's what they say. When does that process take place?
Is there
I don't
specific
think we will
development that you're referring to?
So perhaps I could find your email somewhere and I can put these.
Fanny, email
Yeah, I
the
was gonna-
office, and I'll get that over to Kevin, because that's more of the land use than it
No.
is the housing.
I'm not a member. I'm curious to learn about this. So I'm going to email Kevin Paris directly. I have talked to other people from HPD, but I'm very interested in learning this because affordability, if the affordability is like $3,000 a month, it doesn't become affordable after your mortgage.
Understood. I would say the people that could probably best answer that question are not on the line tonight. So I'll be taking that question back to our finance folks. I think that's a process question that you're asking, and when in the process does that operating budget have to be sort of shared with our finance team? I don't know when in the process that would have to be shared with the board. I think that's also something that I can find out with the team and provide that to the board as a follow-up response.
Don't you think legally you have to disclose that because you're asking for a ULIP on a affordable housing and you're trying to ask, you know, the
So-
developer is asking permission, right? So affordability has to be disclosed and has to be transparent, correct?
So that, you bring up a good question, and I guess my question to that is I don't know, I'm not familiar with this application, so I don't know exactly what the actions that's being requested. And
Mhm.
you know, specific actions will have sort of the parameters that they would need to meet in order to get that allowance of
Yeah,
whatever the
and to
action
follow,
is.
just to reiterate what was said earlier, Fanny, is
Mhm.
this hasn't come across Kevin's desk or HPD because it's not in that stage yet. So I would suggest that if you're able to watch, and Florence could send you the links to the land use committee presentations about this. There was one last week that had more information than the previous one. If you have time to do that, or to attend the next full board meeting and or the next land use committee meeting.
Okay.
In some ways, I think that the land use committee members may have gleaned more information than Kevin unfortunately doesn't yet have about this project.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you.
So if there aren't any additional questions, we can say thank you so much to HPD for coming. We appreciate your time, and we hope that you're able to make our next meeting, which will be in September. And we'll be sure to collectively put together a list of questions and topics and make sure that you have whatever supporting documentation you need to be prepared to present to the group. But yeah, thank you so much for
Absolutely.
coming.
No problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for
I
having
have a
us.
question. Sorry, before
Go ahead.
Kevin
Oh,
leaves.
sorry, Abby,
Kevin
sorry.
and Chris leaves, and it's good to have you, Kevin. Thanks for coming out. I remember a couple years ago we talked about land trusts, and
Yes.
now that's actually the city council is supporting land trusts with funding, which
So
is
are
great.
we.
It
So
is,
are
yeah,
we.
which is great. So I just have a question since you mentioned the Ella funding, and I believe it was the Ella funding that was added to Innovation Queens to provide that deeper affordability. Those extra units that were going to be for the very low income folks. And I think maybe about a month ago, it was kind of, I think negotiations or talks were still happening between the developers and HPD. But I'm just wondering if that financing has been secured. I think that was what the board was really pushing for, was deeper affordability. I guess just wanted to know if there's any update on that.
Yeah, I don't have any further update. I know that those negotiations are still ongoing, but the specific programming for the affordable housing component that we will be involved in has not been finalized yet. And that's typical based off of where the project is. But I have committed to the board that once that information is known and we have some sort of resolution as far as what that programming is, I'll be able to share it with the board unless you get it from the news before I do.
Thank you.
Nancy, do you have a question?
Yes, hi. Thanks for this. I have not been on one of these before. Very interesting. Um, so how is this? I understand that family is like a priority, but there's a lot of single people in this city, and I've never actually owned a home ever. I've always rented. So actually I have two questions. So how does that work for, single ownership? Or, I mean, I guess it's kind of the same. You're just working with an individual. So how does that work? And yeah, I guess I just want to know the particulars,
For this particular project, if you don't mind me adding, I believe that there were studios included. So it wasn't just three. In fact, there were too few 3 bedrooms, but there were,
Studios,
apartments.
1s and 2s even.
Exactly. Yeah.
one,
So,
two. Okay. And I don't know if this is related, but I had actually applied for a property over in Long Island City. Like, I think now it's going on 2 years pretty soon. The problem that I find there is with some of these lotteries and applications, like they don't give you any contact information to get a hold of anyone to find out where you are in the process. Because obviously I would have gotten an email or something. by now. But how do you know where you're at, if you've been, or maybe going to be selected, or because I mean, I've even gone to the property itself, but it doesn't seem like anybody can help, like as far as whom do I speak with, about that.
I believe I can take this question. So in regards to the contact information, so each lottery generally will have a point of contact. So when you submit the application, and once they do the drawing, of course, once you go onto your dashboard, and this is specifically for individuals that apply online. So
Yep.
individuals that apply online, there'll be a contact tab where you can go to, and it will list the developer or the marketing agent that is responsible for that development contact information. So it'll be like an email, a phone number. If for whatever reason, which can be the case, the site may glitch out the information, you can contact us at our hotline, and I'll put that in the chat.
Great.
And we can provide you the direct point of contact, so that this way you can, you can that individual or mail them. In regards to where you stand or where your status is with these type of seminars or previous seminars in which we've done, there are different statuses that your applications will fall underneath. So like you'll see like penalty, something that's in process, action required and completed. Now, when you submit an application and your log number, when you just submit an application, your application remains in pending status. And your status for development won't move until your log number, LOG, your log number is reached. And when your log number is, then you'll receive a notification to submit documents. And that would further you along the tenant selection process for that lottery. So the best indication of the likelihood to be contacted, as we always inform applicants, tenants, whomever, is to go onto your dashboard and see what log number you were assigned for that development. Because if it's, for example, there's only 3 units, and your log number, let's say, is, let's just say 2,000. That's a really high number compared to the amount of units allocated to that development. So that doesn't stand a greater chance or a great chance of being contacted, because they're only looking for 3 applicants, and your log number, just one example, is 2,000. So key of note, when you're applying for applicants, and just to give the other piece of the pie, for applicants that apply by mail, they would not have direct access to that information, but they would need to contact HPD in order to get that information. And usually with each seminar, so every home ownership will have what is called a seminar. It will be a date. Most of them are virtual for the most part, and it will be listed on each advertisement. And applicants are to go to those seminars or participate in the seminars, because you'll find out more information that relates to the development, the financing of the actual development. Usually contact information shared, so if people have questions that come about later on or during the tenant selection process, they'll know who those individuals are, so you'll be able to meet the individuals that are essentially managing the building, as well as meet with financial and so forth.
Right. Yeah. I understand. So, because I mean, I did apply online, but yeah, I guess I just don't understand, ongoing, checking my status. And so yeah, because I'm new at this. So yeah. So what is that? I don't see it in the chat yet. What is that hotline number?
I'm placing it in the chat, but I will say it out loud. So the number is going to be 212-863-7990. And then I'm also going to provide the email address for you to also inquire about your affordable housing applications, whether it be home ownership or rental, whatever may have you. And that email address is going to be HPD.
Whoa, wait. Just give me one moment, because I just brought up my keypad here. So that was 212-863?
Nancy, it's in the
eight-
chat. It's, and just for the sake of expediency here, it's 212-863-7990.
Yep, got it. Okay, just want to
And-
get that in there.
No,
So,
I
yep.
appreciate it. Those were great questions. And Nancy, if you could say and spell your name so it goes into the minutes, please.
Okay, Nancy Cone, that's Nanci, and last name is Cone.
Thank you very much. Do you have any additional questions for
Right.
HPD?
Well, he was giving me HPD, yes?
I can read it. HPD NYC housing
Housing, okay.
at hpd.nyc.gov.
HPD.gov. Okay, just to read it back, HPD NYC housing at hpd.nyc.gov.
There was
Sorry.
a typo. My apologies. It's Housing Connect.
Oh,
at
Housing
HPD
Connect,
dot-
okay.
Oh,
Apologies.
sorry. Okay, wait. Housing Connect. At what?
Do you have
so
access to
Housing
the
Connect-
chat? Nancy?
Oh,
Can you
because
see
I'm going back and forth between my email and to go back and it's a lot. So Housing
It's a-
Connect, right? At
And then
at
the
HPD.
after at is the same.
is okay. hpd.nyc.gov. Got it. Thank you, guys. Thanks for bearing with me. Yeah, because this is all new to me. So, but very informative. I liked the discussion and I look forward to another board meeting in September, you guys said?
Well, there's monthly board meetings and monthly committee meetings, but the next housing committee meeting will be in September. But there's
Be in
a
September.
board meeting every month from September until June. And then the committees, Florence can give you more of this information as a member of the public. Florence is the district manager.
Mhm.
And you'll, as a member of the public, you can attend the full board meeting, which this month is on May 21st at the Astoria World Manor Catering Hall. And then
I see
the
that.
committee meetings are on Zoom for now.
Great, terrific. Thank you so much. Yes, I don't know your name. Wait, I'm sure it's here. No, it's not coming up. But thank you
Shaheen.
for this wonderful meeting. And yeah, I'll be in touch on the hotline or email. Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you,
see that.
Nancy.
So,
Thank you,
Okay.
guys.
Thank you. So I think there are no other board or committee member questions for Kevin, Shaheen. And so thank you for coming, and we hope to see one or all of you again in September.
no problem. Thank you for having us and have a good rest of your meeting and have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, and Nydia. Very sorry, Nydia.
That's fine.
Oh, okay. We still have more though, Katie, right?
Yep. So the second agenda item is from the Comptroller's office. Are those? Oh, I see. Okay. So who will be presenting Homes Now, Homes for Generations campaign?
Hey all, yes, that's me, Elena Condi. I'm representing the New York City Council. I'm a New York City Council Progressive Caucus, I should say. Also joined by my colleague Nicole Christel from the Comptroller's office, who will help answer any questions. And just wanted to start by saying thank you so much for having us. Thank you all so much for being online and for your service to the community board. It really is so important and so grateful you've chosen to spend your evening this way. So thank you for having us. And I will just go ahead and start sharing screen. Great. And as Katie mentioned, I'm here to talk about the Homes Now campaign. This is a city level campaign for more affordable housing. It's actually perfect timing that you all had HPD on earlier tonight, because a lot of what we're advocating for, actually all of what we're advocating for, is more funding for these two HPD programs to increase affordable housing. We know that these programs are deeply needed, just as you all just heard, and that we can really do more to make the city more affordable. So I'll just give a brief presentation to talk about the demand. Before I do so, I'll just say this campaign has wide support within the council. It's a campaign that started out of the Progressive Caucus, but now has really broad support across the council. It was included in the speaker's preliminary response, so has the support of the speaker of the council. And really why we're here today is because we know that community boards represent a really important block. We're moving into negotiations with the mayor, and we really want him to know this is something the public supports. This is something we need. We need more affordable housing in New York City, and this is a great way to do so. So without further ado, I will jump right in. I think because you all are here on this housing committee meeting, you don't need me to tell you that we have a housing crisis in New York City. Over half of New Yorkers are rent burdened, which means spending over 30% of your income on housing costs. Within CB1, 38% of residents are rent burdened. And, you know, crazy report coming out of the Robin Hood Foundation showed that over half of New Yorkers struggle to pay for basic needs: housing, food, electricity, childcare. And we know that housing is a really big driver of that. We also know that homeownership is largely unattainable for low and middle class New Yorkers. It's really hard to own a home. Open Door is a great program that we're advocating for. And as a result of this housing crisis, we know that working and middle class families are leaving New York City at 3 times the rate of the richest New Yorkers. We also know that Black and Brown communities are leaving the city as well. So essentially, this is a campaign to ensure that we have affordable housing that is affordable now, that also will stay affordable over the long term, to make sure that prices don't drastically increase, so that we can have people to really build lives here, to build families, to stay here for generations, to build the New York City that we all know and love. So essentially, this campaign is within the New York City budget. It's a capital campaign that calls for $2.5 billion over the next 5 years, so $500 million a year, into 2 existing housing programs within HPD. And they will fund the construction and preservation of community preservation and new construction, so preserving the existing affordable housing we have and building new affordable housing. And this $2.5 billion will create about 12,000 units of affordable housing. The first program that the funding will go to, the funding is split down the middle between 2 existing HPD programs. And the thinking there was, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We actually have programs that are working well that have just been underinvested in. So let's invest more into these 2 programs that we know work well. So the first one is called Neighborhood Pillars. And this is a program that helps community organizations, so nonprofits, community developers, churches, acquire and rehabilitate for-profit owned housing. And what this does is this really gives community-based organizations, it puts them on equal playing field with for-profit developers who have, you know, the incentive to always be raising profit, to always be increasing costs. So this helps really to make sure that the needed repairs are happening within existing rent stabilized apartments. A few other details about the program. We know that we also have a homelessness crisis in New York City. 20% of the units in this program would be set aside for homeless families. And essentially part of why we are advocating for this program is because we know it works, but the budget was reduced to 0 in 2017, and less than 400 apartments were preserved. I want to highlight a promising example of what Neighborhood Pillars can look like. There was a building in Washington Heights called 552 Academy. And essentially, it was a rent stabilized building that the building was in complete disrepair. It was a horrible place to live. For years, folks had been asking the landlord to make repairs, and he never did. It turned into a neighborhood pillars building, and as a result, with support from the government, with support from a few philanthropic partners, with support from a council member, it turned into a neighborhood pillars building, and it could get the necessary supports that it needed. It went from being a really horrible building that was a pretty bad place to live to really being celebrated as a great affordable option. This is just one example of a neighborhood pillars building. The other side of the program is Open Door, which my colleagues from HPD were actually talking about earlier. So I was very happy to hear them talking about Open Door because we're really advocating to increase funding to Open Door as well. And what makes this special is that this is the opportunity for homeownership. We know that homeownership within New York City has been radically underinvested in. The city has only built about 1,500 units since 2017. This investment would build about 3,000 units. So our goal with this initiative is to increase the annual budget by about 4 times to create more affordable homeownership. And basically the way that this works is that folks buy an apartment, they make a little bit of equity, it's shared equity. But when they sell the apartment, they make sure that the apartment remains affordable, so that the next family who lives there can also buy an apartment at an affordable rate. That way, it's slightly a wealth building opportunity. You know, if people can make a bang for their buck, but we make sure that it isn't only within the speculative market where prices can increase really drastically. So overall, when we look at the impact of this campaign, we will be able to make more affordable housing rental units, about 9,000 units, and create new homeownership opportunities, about 3,100 units of homeownership opportunities that'll be affordable citywide. But beyond that, because these are programs where a tenants association is formed, a co-op is formed, they empower tenants and can address building neglect. As I've mentioned, this is a campaign that started with the City Council Progressive Caucus, which is 18 members of the City Council. Both council members, Julie Wan and council member Tiffany Caban, are part of the Progressive Caucus, who I believe are the council members within CB1. It began with the Progressive Caucus, but since then has really grown to have the full strength of the New York City Council behind it. We also have the support of over 30 community-based advocacy groups, as well as community development corporations and community land trusts. We also have the support of labor, with over 5 unions signing on, and some faith leaders and institutions. So I'll just say this is a campaign that we've been really excited since we launched the campaign in March. Its impact has been really broad, and we've gotten a lot of sign-on because across various stakeholders, people know that we need more affordable housing, that the private market alone won't fix the situation that we're in, and that this is a smart investment to build more affordable housing that stays affordable for generations. And now to the part of turning to you. Part of why we're here today is because we are seeking citywide support from community boards. And we're asking community boards to sign on to a letter of support in support of this campaign. And the goal here is, again, to show Mayor Adams this has the support of the City Council. This is the support of 35 CBOs, of community development corporations, land trusts, and community boards. This is just another kind of way that we can show the strength of this campaign. So I've linked the letter here, and I can also send the letter in the chat. And yeah, we would love to get the community board sign on. I know that every community board has their own process for this, so happy to let you all kind of figure that out internally. But I thank you so much for your time, for letting me speak to you about this campaign, and happy to answer as many questions as I can. Try to be brief, just to keep you all interested and to give you the main points, but for whoever wants the nitty-gritty details, we can go into that as well. So yeah, thank you very much. I think we can open for questions.
Thank you both. Do any committee or board members have questions? Chris?
Hi, thank you so much, Elena. It was very informative. What was the name of the first of the two programs? It already escaped me.
Yeah, it's called Neighborhood Pillars. And
So
we
neighborhood pillars, how does that differ from a community land trust, or is a community land trust under the umbrella of neighborhood pillars, or both?
I'm happy
Yeah.
to pop in here if that's helpful. So basically, I'm really excited that I heard earlier that there was interest in community land trusts across the board here clearly. And what's exciting about these two programs is that there's a list of qualified purchasers or qualified organizations that can work on these two projects. And both of these programs are absolutely a CLT can partner with one of those qualified organizations to develop a CLT, either on one of those rental properties through neighborhood pillars or a home ownership project through Open Door. So there's a lot of synergy between
So
the two.
both can
Yeah.
can intersect with community land trust. That's great
Absolutely.
to know. Thank you.
Yeah, also to say we're working with many community land trusts, and they've been great partners as well. So our demands really go hand in hand. Yes, Evie, please go for it.
Thank you. So I think it's 2.5 billion over 5 years. So I'm just curious, what's the funding level currently? Just to kind of get a sense for, how much right now is being invested and what would be the jump?
Yeah, for neighborhood pillars, that one's really easy because it's zero, which we're really upset about. Yeah, same, Chris. Unfortunately, the budget for this program was slashed, I want to say around 2018. And then, of course, with COVID and the rental market getting a bit crazy, it just wasn't a good time for the program to come back. But now we think it's really a good time for the program to come back. And as for Open Door, I have to double check how much was just put in the executive budget. I believe it was 474 million or 747 million. There's definitely fours and sevens in there. But basically, this would quadruple the funding available for that kind of limited equity cooperative homeownership program.
Thank you. Oh, I just have a question about the letter. So is that an electronic, is it a Google form, right?
Exactly. And
Okay.
we're collecting sign-ons until June 14th, knowing that the New York City budget is due June 30th. So important to make sure your voices are heard before then. And thank you, Nicole, for popping that into the chat. Also, more than happy to follow up with a 2-pager just about the program overall. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Will this also, besides at the committee level, will you be presenting to full boards? I may have missed that.
We did 2 briefings with CSS. Unfortunately, they passed, and those were for community boards broadly. But if it's helpful to have us come to the broader community board, just let me know. I also have a recording of the CSS briefing. Thank you, Nicole, for spelling out the acronym. That's Community Service Society. They're a think tank, essentially, and policy shop. So I can also send 2 videos that they did of briefings, if that's helpful.
Thank you. I guess a question for Evie and Florence would be, how would we present this as a committee? Because we can't vote here. So how would that work for the board? Because the board would have to vote to sign on. Is that correct?
Well, I
Madam Chair, would you want to get a PDF of that and circulate it to the board?
Yeah, I was just going to say we can, first of all, just discuss it with whatever board members are here, whether or not we think we'd want to do that. We don't take a vote, but just see what the general sense is. And if people are in agreement, then this can go to the board to vote on at the full board meeting on May 21st, and giving them something in advance, I think is really good, especially since it's already been drafted, which makes it very, very easy. And then we can take a vote there during the business section. You can just give a report, Katie, on the general, what the ask is. If you do have that 2-pager and want to send it to us, that would be great. If people want more information, but basically then we would take a vote at the board meeting. And then, I guess I can sign on electronically. We can also send just a letter on our letterhead as well. whatever kind of is working best for you.
Yeah, both would be great. Thank you so much.
All right, perfect. Are there any other questions from committee or board members? Is there anyone from the community that has a question? Okay, then, so we can open it up for committee conversation, since nobody has any questions. So I would agree with Elena that it was serendipitous that this would come right after the HPD conversation. Since before, when Evie was the chair of this committee, this has been something we've been talking about. So I would say my inclination is to say we should support something like this, but I would like to hear from other board and committee members if anyone has a comment. Chris?
Yeah, I'm 100% in support of both the proposal and having the board kind of put its official imprimatur on it and voting on it so that it can have a little more impact. But I mean, I have a feeling others will disagree, but it's almost a no-brainer to me. So yes.
I agree with Chris. This is Quinella.
Thank you both. And can you remind us what happens ultimately if you get full sign on? Will this actually move? Is that the hope?
You know, it's all a question of politics, unfortunately, is the short answer. As I mentioned, this has the support of the city council. We're now in the season where we negotiate the budget with the mayor. This ask was not fully included in his draft budget, essentially, that he puts forth to say, this is what I'm putting forth as my priorities. It was included in the version that the city council put forth. So now we kind of have to fight and go back and forth about what the different priorities are. So getting this, community board letter sign on just adds pressure to Mayor Adams to say, this has public support, this is important. It just helps with the negotiation process, essentially.
Okay. Chris, do you have another question? Okay. I'm sorry to put people on the spot. You don't have to answer, but I just want to make sure that board and committee members, if they have something to say, they'll say it. Shahanaz, Corinne, she's here, and Doreen, if you have anything to add, you could put it in the chat if that's easier. Okay. So I think if we're, okay, thank you, Doreen. So I think we have the information we need. If you could send the 2-pager, we will present to our fellow board members next week, and then see if they vote in favor to submit this letter. So thank you for coming, and we look forward to sharing the content with our other board members.
That sounds great. Thank you all so much for your support and for having us. And again, just all for your service on this community board. It's really amazing to see how engaged you all are. And just keep us posted if you have any questions. Thanks so much.
you.
Great to meet you. Take care.
Thank you all so much. Have a
Bye.
great night.
Carrying this, much appreciated.
Thank you.
Bye.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody. So we should take attendance, correct? Before, okay. Do you have the list in front of you, Florence? I'm sorry to do that to you. Do I need to do the call? Can Florence do attendance by saying the names, or do I have to do it? Okay. So Florence, if you could do that, please.
On behalf of Katie Ellman, Chair of this committee, Housing Committee. Katie Ellman, Chair.
Present.
Present. Vanessa Jones Hall, Vice Chair. Christian Beatrice. Chris Hanway.
Here. I've wanted to say that since school, so thank you for giving me the opportunity, Florence.
Greenwood Hayes.
Both Corinne and Christian were here for a bit.
I had them already. I
Yeah.
wrote their names
Yeah.
down.
So
Okay.
And Raga was here as well. So I'll put Raga. She was here. I'll put Christian. Christian was here, you say, Madam Chair?
he
Christian
was for a
Beatrice,
short.
okay, then I'll put him as well.
Yeah.
And Corinne was here
Doreen
too.
Mohammed, yeah, I know. Doreen Mohammed is here, I saw her. Maricela Santos. And Dominic Stiller. So I have Katie Hellman, Chris Hanway, Corinne Wood-Hayes, Raga, Christian Beatrice, and Doreen Mohammed as in attendance, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Florence. So the last piece of the meeting is new business. And we are going to talk about the capital and expense budget, which each committee contributes to for the full board. And if it's okay with you, Evie, can you kind of talk through that, especially for any new members, what exactly we're tasked to do, what each committee is tasked to do?
Sure. So in October, in September, we'll have a public hearing at the right before the full board meeting, where any member of the public can come and say, I want to see elevators at this subway stop, which happened many, many years ago. Or I would like to see this, I would like to see that. They could make any requests as a member of the public. We as a board will submit a list to the city of what our priorities are, both in terms of capital projects. So those are physical projects, things that are built, right? Renovations, those kinds of things, as well as expense requests, which might be for more personnel in the Department of Buildings, or it might be for more housing inspectors, it could be anything. But each committee should start thinking now about what the committee would like to suggest or put forth. And there may not be anything, but I think with housing, there's probably some things that you might want to put forth. And then you can prioritize as a committee however you want. I'm assuming that would be at your September meeting that you're going to have. But basically, if you have, a bunch of things that the committee kind of comes up with, you'd prioritize what those would be. We would submit them. Florence is going to kind of collect everything along. Corinne and Amy are the chairs of the Capital Expense Committee. But basically, the board will eventually kind of synthesize everything together, all the different suggestions and requests, and prioritize those on a list and submit those to the city for the FY26 budget, right? So these are requests. So this is how, different things kind of happen within Community Board 1 and all the Community Board districts as well, right? So it's kind of like our opportunity to say, here are the needs, whether it's, has to do with housing, whether it has to do with parks, whether it has to do with, all the other kinds of things that require funding. So I think Katie is just trying to put it out there that, like, as a housing committee, you should start thinking about like what that is. And you can certainly find examples of what can be, examples of suggestions under each kind of category, government agency, so to speak, right? What HPD, what are some of the typical asks that people make when they're doing a capital or expense request? You can see what we did last year. Florence sent out that list to, I think, all the committee chairs.
Entire board, Madam Chair.
I wasn't sure, I couldn't tell just because it doesn't really say board or committee, but so everybody got it, but basically it will say, it shows, I think for housing last year, it was funding for community land trusts and might have been something for like more tenant counseling services or something along those lines, but those are on that list.
Madam Chair, there's more than that. So for example, for housing, you would have buildings department. So buildings department, you have nighttime inspectors and there are other things. So if you take a look at that list, what happens is all the district managers citywide meet with every single agency. this isn't only based on what the board members ask for, it's also based on what the agencies ask for. So most of the things that the agencies ask for regarding, for example, funding for personnel, which is an expense item, that comes at the capital and expense budgets, which the district managers attend only. So for example, I'll tell you this, HPD is very low staffed. If you take a look at the expense list, you would want to see, does HPD have a request for more staffing? And maybe that's something that your committee might deem necessary because they are very low staffed right now. For example, we were supposed to have a meeting about Open Doors program in conjunction with this other program that I found for you tonight. And unfortunately, because of staffing, they didn't show up. So that's just an example that would
Yeah.
help you.
We also just want to make sure that we're looking at what the community thinks it needs as well. And we're putting those forth at the same time.
Yeah,
So,
those are the public comment portion in September.
right. And so our job also as board members is to talk to people in our community, is talk to organizations perhaps working in our community on the different issues and see what they think as well. So basically, I think it's to see, you know, Chris, you work right at in Queensbridge Houses. Corinne is there too. Are there things there that community would like to see? And again, it's not limited to housing, right? You're on the housing committee. There's obviously like I said, there's parks, there's other kinds of categories as well. So it's really just, I think, to start thinking about that, because September is really going to be the next meeting. And so to not wait until September to begin that process, right? Or that inquiry.
Yeah, and there'll be reminders coming at the in-person board meetings and through email to remind us to do it. But we also, you know, it gives us time to collectively, you know, ask our neighbors and other people we know, like what's pressing, invite them to the meeting so they can, because there is a public comment period. That's built into is this correct? Yeah. So
yeah, it's a separate like public hearing before the board meeting. It's just to take, you know, ideas and suggestions and asks from members of the community. And I think the outreach is going to be really important because I don't know if anyone showed up last year at our public hearing, right? So, but we know that people want things. So part of our job also is to kind of get the word out as well, let people know that it's happening and show up if you have an idea. So.
exactly. Shahanaz, you had your hand raised and I just wanted to make sure and check in and see if you did have a question now.
I was wondering, when is the due date for the submit the about capital? I hear it's like we can work in September, but when is the due date for submitting?
I think the board submits its finalized lists by the end of October. Is that correct?
It's the vote has to happen at the actual October meeting. So everything for the board's actions are done in October. All the review process happens during the month of September because the district managers all meet with the agencies. So then we come back together after your deliberations at the September meeting. And at the October meeting is when you will have to have everything in to be prioritized.
Thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, Katie and Evie, just a quick question. I just want to clarify. So when we put in these suggestions, budget requests, these are actual programmatic things, for example, or could be eviction prevention. I don't even know off the top of my head which city agency or agencies would fund those programs, but because that falls under the rubric of housing, we could put in a request for additional funding.
I don't think, Chris, eviction would be Queen's DA's office. We don't fund them. That really wouldn't be HPD. That's where a little bit of a confusion might occur.
But even if it was is this only for the housing committee, it's only funding requests for HPD, or could it be to other agencies that touch housing issues? I guess
according to Madam Chair, because you're all board members, you can touch upon parks, you can touch upon Department of Environmental Protection. In this committee level, it would be things like buildings department and things that touch upon housing.
Well,
HPD,
I would
buildings
certainly, I would
department.
certainly think that keeping people from being evicted from their homes touches upon housing, but that's
But
the
we
broader
don't
question is,
fund-
yeah, okay.
We don't fund the DA's office.
I just don't think the DA does eviction prevention, but okay,
I mean,
I'll
we
put my
can't
vote.
like, sorry, I just want to ask, so we can't ask to like get funding for actual like public or otherwise deeply affordable housing or like to pay off people's rents. I feel like that's what,
No.
Chris is alluding to. Yeah,
That's
so
sort of where I
not
was
helpful.
going, Doreen.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll find out for you if there
Thanks,
are
Lauren.
programs within HPD that require funding. If you, yeah.
They
send
may
me an-
have, so they may
I'll
be
find
doing
out.
some eviction prevention work, so that would be great. Thank you.
They may
Yeah,
have
I
a name
just-
of a program.
I
Yeah.
just dropped in the chat just a budget request reference guide that the city put out just to even help you as a community board member to see some examples of what some of these, different agencies would do. So I just dropped it in the chat, but if you kind of go to page
I
20,
emailed it, Madam Chair, to the entire board also, so they'll all know they have all the links also.
great.
With
So
with the list.
if you look at 20, it'll say if the need is affordable housing programs, you'll see some of the things. If you just open up the link that I just dropped in the chat, go to page 20, it'll say a C next to it if if it goes under capital. It'll have an E next to it if it goes under expense. So these are just some examples under there, right? So that will help you start thinking about that. Doreen, I wouldn't say like we can't ask for this. It doesn't hurt to just ask whether or not it's going to fit. We can determine that. So I think if there's something that you are, interested in or you would like to see, you put that forth and then we'd figure out whether or not it goes or not. So I would start with, that way as opposed to saying, we can or can't do this. It might fit in somewhere. So
Yeah, I just took a look and under the housing one, you can ask for deeply affordable and stuff housing. So it looks like you can just ask for those type of things.
yeah. There might be an updated one that's going to come our way. This is from last year, I think, but I think it's pretty much the same every year, these budget guides. And so for like Shahnaz is on this call, right, who's the chair for Health and Human Services. This is something that you would want to talk about with your committee as well. Because you want them to think about what are some of the needs for that committee, and is that something that you'd want to put forth? And just like the purple right here is housing, economic development and land use, there is information or examples, again, under transportation, under parks. I'm sure there's, other categories as well in that budget guide. So take a look. It was sent out. And, hopefully that will help you as you meet with your committees, and you can share these examples with them to help them think about what's possible. Chris, same with public safety, as public safety chair.
And to be clear, I'm sorry to keep going on. If we're not meeting until September, Florence and Evie, there would be time to do this as a committee in September before these recommendations have to be submitted. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would work with Florence on scheduling your September.
Yeah, we
meeting.
already started. Great. Thanks,
Awesome.
Evie. Appreciate it.
Thank you for that. That went much smoother than me trying to hobble together the words to share that, Florence and Evie. I've been on parks. It was easier for me since I have so much more experience with parks and volunteering in parks. So this is a good learning experience for me on this and the other committees that I serve on. If there aren't, any new business or anything else that committee members would like to discuss? No?
So just-
Okay. Oh, go
just to
ahead,
su-
Evie, sorry.
Just to summarize, we are gonna put that letter forward for a vote at the board meeting, right? That's something that everyone, okay, great. Just wanted to make sure.
I have a question. Regarding the link you put it, Evie, it will be able to, anyone can send it to all the people in the committee this way, we can open it, because sometimes you cannot take copy from the chat and you lose it, but if in the email, we have it, this is better. Thanks a lot.
Sure, yeah.
Great. And now I'll just go back to the previous question. Is there any new business or anything other committee members would like to share or questions that you may have? No? Okay. So thank you everyone for coming. We don't vote to adjourn, or do we? Nope.
No, we're just gonna say goodnight.
We're gonna say goodnight before 8 o'clock and congratulate ourselves on that. And then I look forward to being in your company next Tuesday.
See you next week.
Have a good night, everybody. Thank you so
Have a
much.
good night. Bye.
Good night.
Bye.